Welcome to the 1000 Hours Outside podcast. Today we have special guest John Muir Laws, who goes by Jack. Welcome, Jack.
Jenny, I'm absolutely delighted to be here with you. Thank you so much for having me on the show.
Yes, I'm really excited about this episode. Because I am a newbie to nature journaling, and so I know that personally for our family, we're just going to learn so much. I just want to read your bio here. John Muir Laws, aka Jack, is an artist, naturalist, and nature journaling mentor. He has been journaling for decades, has written many books on nature journaling, and is working tirelessly to bring nature into the minds and hearts of people across the world. Jack talks about how paying sustained, compassionate attention to nature and to the people in our lives profoundly changes the way we relate to each other and interact with the world. What a bio! You're impacting the world. What a bio.
It's so strange. Before COVID, I was doing lots of stuff focused in the San Francisco Bay Area. And so every month I would go around on this circuit and teach these free nature journaling workshops and lead these field experiences for people. And those were really popular with folks and families all over the Bay Area.
Mm-hmm.
When COVID hit, I couldn't meet people face to face anymore, and I went online, and it's opened up this. It's opened up all these workshops to an audience across the globe, and it's really fun. Now, when I teach these classes, there are people tuning in from the other side of the planet. There are youth showing up on, you can see on their videos that they have a headlamp on. It means it's pretty dark over there. On the side of the planet. It's really fun, and it's just it's been also just wonderful to meet so many more people.
Yeah. I mean, everyone speaks so highly of you. You know, I've listened to a couple podcasts that you were on, and then Elizabeth she just talks about how generous you are, and how you just have all these materials for people that are free, and you're just touching so many lives. So what a gift to be able to talk to you this evening here for us. So thanks for being on. I have a couple of your books here. And actually, we had friends over today, Jack, and they were like, "Oh, we have that book." So it was really cool. So I've got The Laws Guide to Nature, Drawing, and Journaling. These are just these thick. This is like a hefty, amazing. Like you feel like you are getting your money's worth and more out of these books. Like I'm like, does this thing cost $1,000? No, it's only $35. And same with this one.
It's sort of the thickness of a telephone book.
Yeah.
And so it's some people have told me that something they've discovered about it is that it is useful for pressing plants.
That's funny. I don't know if I want to you'd get all the like dye in there though. I guess if you have wax paper, but yeah, I mean, these are hefty books. I think, I love books. And so you buy a book sometimes and, you spend $25, you get a couple things out of it. This book, it's like every page they're fantastic. Okay. So here's where I'm at. I feel kind of guilty and remiss. Like I've been missing out on this. And but your book didn't add to that. It inspired me. Like, oh, I'm going to add this in. That tone of it, and you just get so much out of the book. So anyway,
let's kind of pick up on that thread there, because I think you touched on something that a lot of people feel, that like I feel remiss. I feel kind of guilty and remiss because there are so many things that we sort of feel that we ought to do, that we should be doing. And if I wasn't doing them already, I was doing something wrong. And now I'm behind, right? And so if I'm so far behind, why even start? Because isn't it too late to start putting in my time on developing some new skill? But this is a set of kind of interlocking skills that you can come to at any point. And the interesting thing is that you probably will have some part of this, everybody has some part of this skill set already much more developed. So you can use that as sort of your safety zone, your comfort zone. Yeah. So for instance, if you are more comfortable with writing, and using words. You can launch your own nature journal and have it be mostly words. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to be prodding you and getting you to like, all right, let's just start to add in a little map or a little diagram, all right, a little tiny sketch of this. All right, next time maybe we'll try two. And or let's see if let's start counting things. Can we measure that too? And what happens
Mm.
is that starting where you are comfortable, you can then take little baby steps beyond that, and you're going to build up this suite of other associated skills. And a lot of people think that if you have to be born an artist in order to draw pictures, and it's completely false.
Yeah.
Of course, if you don't draw, you're not going to be somebody who draws. But nobody starts being able to draw. Nobody starts being able to do really any of these skills. They're things that you develop over time. And as an adult, you start doing this on a regular basis. You're going to find that those skills that you haven't developed yet they will develop really, really fast, surprisingly fast.
I mean, that's so encouraging. This is really what I got out of your book. I kind of like these are big books, so I grab it and I'm thinking, okay, I got this podcast with Jack. We've never nature journaled. I'm feeling like, ah, and I pick up these books and I think a tone of the book could be, you've missed out. What have you been doing? But the tone of the book is so encouraging, even like as a book for parenting or for teachers. Like you talk in here about the growth mindset. People believe that their most basic abilities can be developed through dedication and hard work. That brains and talent are just the starting point. You say that does not mean learning new things is easy. You talk about the productive struggle. So,
Yeah.
so I'm getting out of your book, this inspiration to nature journal, but also it's rippling. It's rippling my thoughts in other directions, right?
Yeah,
Um,
concepts like the growth mindset just have this universal applicability. So the general idea is that you're not stuck with the brain that you were born with. It's the brain that you make by the decisions and the work that you do while you're alive. And what neuroscience has shown is that throughout your life, your brain is constantly reorganizing itself and reconstructing itself and laying down new tracks of neurons based on a very clear and simple signal that you give your brain. And that is repetition with effort.
I mean,
And
it's really inspiring. I think that we all have things that we're intrinsically interested in, but maybe not intrinsically naturally good at, you
right,
know?
yes,
And so I took so much out of the beginning of these books just as a parent, as a person, as we're home educators, so as a homeschool mom teacher, um,
well, as a homeschool parent, this idea of growth mindset, it's one of the critical ideas to get across to your youngsters. And you can do
mm,
that in all sorts of ways. But it is strange how, just sort of in the way we think that we're supposed to encourage our kids, we can very easily end up reinforcing a fixed mindset. So there's this fascinating set of research that shows, like, for instance, if you say to a little youngster, like, oh, honey, you are so good at math. You are such a good mathematician. I'm really proud of you. You're really good at math. First, we're saying to ourselves, like, this is positive reinforcement and it's about math. Hey, what could possibly go wrong? The thing is, the way you're reinforcing it is in the framework of a fixed mindset.
mm.
So you are saying you have this trait called being good at math. And
And
lucky
either you
you,
are or you aren't.
that's right.
Yeah.
And now a trait like that also has a limit. There's going to be a point at which you are no longer good at math.
Wow.
And so when you reinforce kids like that, they are more likely to cheat because they don't want to let you down.
Mm,
They don't want it. It's heartbreaking.
yeah. Yeah.
And they're not as willing to try things that are challenging for them. So there's this one beautiful study where they gave this test to kids, and it was in 2 parts. And partway through, the kids stopped and took a little milk and cookies break. And during that, the researchers went to some of the kids randomly and they said, you know, we were looking at the way you were solving these problems. We just want to let you know you are really good at math. You're a fantastic mathematician and you've got just this great skill. You're really good at math. And with others, they said, we're watching you during the test and we noticed that you kept going. When you're doing things and they're challenging you kept going. And there's other places where you were trying things in different ways. You know, mathematicians do that too. That's those practices. So they're focusing on something sort of about the way that you do it, not about a trait that you have. And then here's the amazing part. For part 2 of the test, they say to the kids, there's 2 piles of tests here, and you can pick whichever one you want. This pile over here on my left, it's questions just like the ones that were doing before, sort of the same nature of problems. And over here in this other pile, there are some problems in here they're a lot more challenging, but there's some really interesting ones in there. You might find that, you know, really interesting and engaging. And then you just go ahead and pick. Well, those kids who you told they were good at math, they go right for that pile where they know they can do it, and they don't want it because they don't want to let you down.
Right.
And those kids who are thinking about their process and like trying different things in different ways, they pick up the challenge pile and they dive in and they do well.
Wow. It's really, really powerful. I was so,
It makes the
yeah,
hair stand up on the back of my
so
neck.
interesting that you can take a book about nature journaling,
Yeah.
right? And the way that you wrote it and sort of this approach that you take, that everyone can draw. It's actually interesting that you brought up the math because I used to be a math teacher and for high school students. And I think math and drawing are similar in the fact that people think they're either good at it or not good at it, and they shut down, and then they wear that badge forever. People are, adults, and they say, I've never been good at math. I can't draw. Even there was a story in your book about from Amy Tan, and she said that a teacher told her she had no imagination, and that's what was necessary for creativity, and so she stopped drawing. You know, so there's an interesting parallel there.
Yeah. One of the sort of the great growth mindset researchers, Joe Bowler, she's a mathematician and
Hmm.
has done most of the growth mindset math research. She has said to me that she believes that probably the biggest thing that people have a very clear fixed mindset about is mathematics. They say, I'm not a math person, right?
Hmm.
And she's been able to prove quantitatively that this is a completely false notion, and it just sort of
All
how
right.
you hold it in your head.
Yeah.
She feels that the second the second topic that people have the greatest sort of fixed mindset kind of initial approach to is drawing a picture.
Yeah.
I think she's right.
It really is fascinating. I mean, so I read this introduction in How to Teach Nature Journaling from this Amy Tan, and she talked about, how at a young age, well, first of all, she said, before words, we have wonder. And I thought, what a cool statement. Isn't it true? Like kids are all little ones. They're pointing, they're so interested before they even have words. But then she talked about how little ones, they're doodling and they're scribbling and they're so into it, and then by kindergarten age, I think you're already starting to notice, oh, I'm not as good, or that person is better than I am. You're starting to have this comparison creep in, um, and you really doubt, what you're creating. And so I love in the book how you talk about, um, you say you draw to see, not to make a pretty picture. You say if you're drawing something new, if you notice something new, your drawing is successful.
That's
And
right. So
it's
yeah,
really encouraging.
we're moving the goalpost.
Hmm.
It's not about making that pretty picture. The
Yeah,
goal is the experience that you have as an observer. So if you see things that you otherwise wouldn't have seen or remember them more vividly, or maybe this process makes you just slow down to the point that questions that otherwise wouldn't have come to you come up and can dance with you.
yeah,
That drawing, that journaling process is successful.
Yeah.
It did what it is there to do. And when you really embrace that idea, it gives you permission to make lots and lots and lots of drawings
Hmm.
and diagrams and maps and just little doodles that help. The part of your brain that is involved with making a little picture is a different region of your brain that is involved with either mathematics or with language. And so when you are bringing those little doodles and maps and icons and little sketches and pictures to bear on whatever you're observing or whatever you're thinking about, you are quite literally engaging different regions of your brain. You've got more of a
Wow.
neural trampoline to engage
Yep.
with any of these ideas.
And then your brain functions better in the long run. I guess I didn't, I, I'm encouraging families to get outside. It's because going outside changed our life. I was really struggling as a mom. Um, but I did not have a clear understanding about nature journaling, just like how I didn't have a clear understanding about how nature helps all of us grow in so many facets anyway. But it's
Mm-hmm.
been so
True.
interesting to read about how the journaling really helps brain growth and I think and brain function. And when parents know those things, I was thinking about how, so as I'm reading through your things, I'm thinking about how, so we have 5 kids in 8 years. So they're 8 and under. And I just remember thinking, like, when we used to go outside and I had this double stroller and a little platform off the back for another kid to stand, and I had a kid on my back, and we had so much
That's
stuff, Jack.
multitasking.
I mean, it's like things are overflowing. And I kind of was, before I read your books, I would have thought, well, how could I possibly add in nature journaling? But then I thought, well, how easy is it to throw in a journal and some art pens? I
Yeah.
mean, and there's so many cute little art pen cases. I mean, that's easy. And there really are truly so many times where if we're in the right environment, we're not by a road or anything. The kids are just exploring. And I could have had a little nature journal out and I could have been drawing and modeling for them. And I'm sure they would have come over and joined right in too. Um, so for parents to know, it's so powerful to know that this is helping with brain growth and that those are lifelong benefits.
Yes, you're absolutely right. So you hit on two really, really interesting themes there. So one is that the amount of stuff that you have to do to kind of enter into this is the bar is low,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
You get yourself your own little kind of just a little cute mini kit. And
Hmm.
then you described what you did with it is that rather it said like, Danny, I need you to come over here and sit right down. I need you to nature journal right now. Like, no, you said that you were going to pull it out yourself and just make a little sketch, do a little bit of nature journaling here, a little nature journaling there. And they don't listen to anything we say, but they watch everything we do.
Yeah.
And then next thing you know, little Danny's going to be like,
Well,
could
yeah,
I?
they're going to take your pen and your book
They're going to
right
take
from
your
you.
pen.
Right
That's
from
right.
you. That's what I thought. If I would have done that in those moments when we're sitting on the blanket doing nothing else, and so like you said, it's a very accessible. You had said in here that you had a little hook, you hung your journal up, like this how to take it with you. You have a whole section in there on this is in the other book I wrote down on how to take it with you, and you said you got a little hook. Okay, so you said in time I realized I had too much stuff in my kit. You had to like pare it down so that it's easy to grab. And you said your system is that it fits in an over the shoulder bag and hangs on a hook next to the front door. So you just grab it and go. A
That's all you
kid
need
could
to
have
do.
the cutest little bag. I mean, there's so many there's so
My
many fun
daughters
ways to do
call
it.
theirs. Yeah, my daughters call them the adventure kits. I've got my adventure
Aw,
kits,
yeah.
and so there's a little microscope thing in there. There's a binoculars in there. There are journaling supplies.
Yeah.
My daughters also, when they were little, I would tell them these adventure stories starring two brave and adventurous little girls named Amelia and Carolyn, which of course
Cute.
were
That's
their
their names.
names.
Yeah.
And there'd always be one point in the story where they're getting ready to go on this adventure. And so they're packing a kit. So they're getting their flashlight and they're getting journaling supplies and they're kind of getting, and we kind of go through this again and again and again. And so they started making their own adventure girl kits.
That's
And
awesome.
and one thing that's in the stories, um, I would always say, and of course they packed a rope because you always need a rope. And so of course you'd have to figure out some point in the story where you'd have to have a rope in order to get up, down, over, around, or through whatever obstacle, or to, put a leash on the dragon, or whatever it is that is going
Mhm.
on in the narrative. So my daughters then put ropes in their kits. They've got this rope they've named Elizabeth, the Elizabeth rope.
That's
And
awesome.
Elizabeth comes with us. Like, they'll say, like, do you have Elizabeth? Of course I've got Elizabeth. So we were just up in the redwood forest, exploring around this last weekend. Did a little bit. We found an albino redwood tree. Did a little bit of nature journaling with that. Come around the corner. There's this incredible magic climb me redwood tree, but part of it is inaccessible. And you know what you needed to get up it?
Elizabeth.
Elizabeth.
Yeah.
So that's right.
Oh, I mean, these books embody you. You're fun and you're accessible and you're just wanting to draw people into this world. I mean, those are it's full, your books are full of practical, right?
Yeah.
Like as a parent, like I want to make this fun. I get a cool little bag. Like you said, the entry point is low. It's not expensive. This is going to be airing on Thanksgiving. So we're heading into the holiday season. Well, get your kid an adventure kit, with their journaling
Yes.
stuff.
Yes.
Get them the book. I mean, this is fantastic. I want to talk more about the why. Um,
Mhm.
you have in the How to Teach Nature Journaling book, I mean, just pages after pages about the why that I was unaware of. Um, so do you want to, can you hit me some high points? Why, I mean, it's a really
Yeah.
big question, but why
Yeah.
nature
So,
journal?
first, let me, for folks who haven't experienced this before, what we're talking about with nature journaling is basically you're out in the woods somewhere, and you have a little blank notebook in your hand and just very basic drawing tools, writing tools. You're making observations of what you see and translating those down onto your page, along with the questions that you ask. You're talking about how Mary Oliver said at the start, we have wonder.
Hmm.
Um, and we want to reinforce that wonder instead of put a little stopper in it. So we're
Yes.
training ourselves to like find the questions and find the question behind the question. So we're writing those down in our journals. And sometimes we figure things out. We write those down in the journals. Sometimes we say like, this reminds me of this, and we're writing those down in the journals. Sometimes that kind of almost creates a little poem. We write those down in the journals. So the journal um, is this medium that is between your brain and the
Mm.
world that is in front of you. And it reflects back to you everything that you've noticed and wondered and thought.
So I just want to say, I had it written down on this paper what is considered journaling, but I was a little embarrassed to ask.
Yeah, yeah,
And
um,
so you knew you started with the what. I'm
yeah.
so grateful that you did that.
Um,
Because
and
I asked the why because I was kind of embarrassed, even though I had the question down. But it's like I do think that is a question. Like, what is you look through this book and it's so vast. It's really neat to see. I think that kids would love to look through these books. It's really neat to see the
yeah,
vast array of what this nature journaling could look like. So
I
you
think that
answered the what.
that's a great approach to do it, because everybody's journal is going to look different.
Yeah.
So that's why in the How to Teach Nature Journaling book, um, in that book, I've got journal pages from a bunch of different people who keep nature journals.
Yes. Yes. In
And
different languages, even.
yeah, because there's not one way to do it. So if I
Yeah.
just had all my stuff in there, people would think like, oh, in order to do nature journaling, my nature journaling should look like John Muir Laws' stuff. But
Yeah.
no, I mean, all these people are taking totally different angles and approaches to
Yeah.
doing what they're doing, and they're getting different things out of it.
I'm
You are going
holding
to,
I'm holding it up as you're talking because this goes on YouTube too. Just gonna
oh, cool.
so so just for people like I mean the I was very intrigued, and just I mean this is interesting to see all these different types of drawings and types of sketches and even like graphs and um, it's so open-ended.
Right.
Yeah.
And so you can start where you are with
Hmm.
whatever your comfort zone is.
Yeah.
And then you just push yourself a little bit outside of that. So let's say for you, it's writing. That's where, okay, I feel it. By the way, with your writing, you don't need to spell correctly. You don't need any kind of grammar, right? You're
Hmm.
just using words. The journal is for you.
Yeah.
It's not for a presentation to somebody about like, look
Hmm.
at the drawing that I did.
Yeah.
It is, the journal itself is, the way I think of it, it's your brain on paper.
I love
And if you
that.
don't want anybody else looking at it, just tell them it's your diary. And
Yeah.
then everybody leaves it
Yeah.
alone. But
Yeah.
if you want to share, like if you're okay with letting your kids or family or other people look through it, they'll be inspired and they'll want to try it too because it's
Yeah.
really fun.
Yeah.
Um,
And
and
so, okay, so that's the what.
that's the what,
So,
and there's the why.
which I am so thankful. Like I really am really thankful that you took the time to talk through that because it was a little fuzzy for me, but like I said, I was a little embarrassed to ask. So way to go. uh, okay, so then the why. I mean, there's pages and
Yeah.
pages in your book about the why.
So I think it's important for us as educators to understand the why.
Hmm.
Because then if we can translate that authentically to our kids, they intrinsically get it. Like, oh,
Hmm.
I get it. Yes, this is something that I want to be part of my game. I
Yeah.
see why you're doing this. It isn't just one of these kind of busy work things that grown-ups sometimes come up with.
Hmm.
Um,
Right.
the grown-ups will sometimes have these grand ideas of what you should do. Mm-mm. That's not what this is about.
Right.
This is this is for you by you.
Self-directed.
And yeah, so a big part of this is kind of engaging our intrinsic motivation to do it ourselves. And so that's why kind of really embracing the why about it is so useful.
Yeah.
Um, a couple of just sort of big picture ideas that I think are helpful. One is to realize that as wonderful as our human brains are, they are incredibly limited. It's like a little computer out there. There's lots of problems, by the way, with the computer analogy for brains, but
Hmm.
I will use it here just to make this one small point. It's like a computer like the one I'm working on that doesn't have a lot of memory. You try to do too many things on it and it's going to slow down and it's going to crash.
Hmm.
And so all I have to do is have you try to remember bird had red band across the upper chest, white on the throat, and then white lower down on the belly, no wing bars, and maybe a little bit of dark at the tip of the tail. Um, and your brain is completely full and is useless for doing anything else. So what you do is you just take those observations and you put them down in the book. You take those observations, these other observations, you drop them down in the book. The book is now going to hold them for you and allow you to do something greater than you could do just inside the walls of your brain. So this is essentially the journal is thinking outside your brain.
Wow.
And it is extending the capacity of what your brain can do because they're in two very
Oh, I
important
like that.
ways. One is that you can get more stuff in there than you can get into your brain, which can handle maybe sort of 7 different thoughts plus or minus 2 at one time. And then thank you very much, it's full, right?
Hmm.
Um, the other is that when you get these ideas down on the page and you look at them, you're now all your observations, your questions, your things, everything you've noticed is reflected back at you. And you can now actually notice what you have been noticing. You
Hmm.
can think about what you have been thinking about. How am I thinking? What kinds of questions am I asking? It makes the whole process that is usually behind the curtain available and accessible to you. This is something that neuropsychologists call metacognition. So the idea of thinking about what you're thinking about. And if you're able to do that and really reflect on your process, you end up thinking better. So, but the problem with if I told you right now to start thinking about what you're thinking about, you actually can't do it because the minute you start thinking about what you're thinking about, you are no longer thinking about what you were thinking about. You are now thinking about that thing, right? And so it gets pretty meta pretty fast. And so you're not able to observe yourself thinking. When you look down on the journal page, you see yourself thinking right there on the page, line by line, stroke by stroke, with a picture, with a diagram, with words, with things that you're counting, things that you're measuring. It also makes your memory bulletproof. Human memories, we have the impression, we have the illusion of having good memories. You can remember some experience that you had in childhood vividly. Well, what research has found out is that lots of the memories that we have are things that are mostly the stuff that we made up.
No way.
Yeah,
Wow.
it's called
Wow.
confabulation. And when your brain remembers something from the past, what it's doing, it's not just like pulling up a file in a computer. Um, I think the best analogy that I have for it is a really bad photocopy machine. So let's say
Hmm.
you have some experience, that's your picture, you put it in the bad photocopy machine. This terrible reproduction comes out of it. You look at the terrible reproduction, you go like, oh, that's a terrible reproduction. So you get out your pen and you touch it up and you fix in all the places, right? That's what your brain does. It takes some of these old
Hmm.
memories, they come up, and then there are all these gaps. Your brain seamlessly fills in all the holes, but you have no knowledge of what was stuff that you made up and what was the original file. Now, the next time you remember that same phenomenon, it's going to be starting from this modified file, from starting from this bad Xerox copy that you retouched. You put that back into the bad Xerox machine, it comes out with a bad copy of the retouched bad copy. Now you retouch that again. So every time you're remembering something, you're actually modifying your memories.
Wow.
That's scary,
Yes.
especially if we have the illusion though that we are kind of that our memories are good and solid. Um, and I know what I saw, and but data doesn't back that up. So when you make an observation and you write it down in your journal, it becomes you now have those items aren't going to be modifying and changing over time
Hmm.
because you've got them there on paper. You can come back to that. Major details of our
Yeah.
past, of the things that you observe. So in your journal, you can have stuff about your nature observations. You can also have your thoughts about, you can sort of splice this in with the practice of keeping a diary.
Hmm.
People who keep a diary are more emotionally intelligent than people who don't.
Okay, Jack. Wow.
I mean,
Well,
it's
that's
so
so
one of the
interesting.
things. Yeah, it's one of the things that
Wow.
to increase people's emotional intelligence is get them to start journaling, and
Well,
then it's because people who do that, they actually learn from their mistakes. uh,
well, because they're remembering correctly.
yeah, and
Partially. I'm sure there's so many reasons why.
yes, right, and it makes you more reflective. You can look down on the piece of paper, and you also um, generally what we do with our memory, our sense of self is it's a story that we tell ourselves that kind of keeps the self as the hero character kind of bopping along, making good decisions in the face of adversity. Um, and people's if you've ever heard somebody tell a fishing story, that changes over time. So do our stories of our past and our hero's journey. And
Interesting.
um, we change our internal narrative to fit the story that we would like to tell. And I do this too. It's just a
Hmm.
human trait. Um, but if we're trying to kind of make if we're trying to make decisions based on like these terrible memories and this inability to really observe deeply and all these sorts of things, having a brain outside your brain that can hold things in a way that keeps them and doesn't have them modify over time. and that is intentionally using these three different languages: words, pictures, and numbers. So those are each engaging different regions of your brain.
Hmm.
And you are giving yourself this Swiss Army knife mental toolkit that you can then open up on any phenomenon or experience that you have going forward in the rest of your life. For instance, if your kids start to do this on a regular basis, they will become, if they're not already, they will become visual thinkers. They will
Hmm.
become people who can think with pictures.
Wow.
They will become people who can communicate with pictures. And that ends up being incredibly important. There have been a number of times in my life when I've been in meetings where we've been having a discussion about something, and it's just ideas are floating around and nothing is really kind of concrete or coming together. And then there's somebody who's kind of quiet, and she's sort of sitting over at the end of the table, and then she reaches out and she pulls a napkin over to her and she makes a little doodle on the back and thinks for a little bit more, changes the doodle, and then pushes it across the table and says, actually, well, I'm seeing it this way. There are actually three parts, and this is the one that's separate from these two are interacting with each other, but this is the one that it's out on its own, and that's where we're putting all of our resources. But really, all the action is over here. And everybody looks at this little diagram that this person made. There's a moment of silence, and everybody goes, well, duh. And what that person did is they used visual thinking to frame ideas. And if you can be somebody who takes an idea and turns it into a picture, the person who controls the napkin controls the meeting.
Wow.
And if you can't make your own napkin, you or your kids are just going to be subject to other people's napkins for the rest of their lives.
Well, that's such a great way to put it. That's such a great way to put it. And I think you're just scratching the surface here of the depth of benefits. I think I heard in a podcast you were just talking about gratitude and presence, and so beyond this brain enhancement, there are all these other things as well. One thing that grabbed me was you said that while researching this phenomenal full of things book, you said we interviewed working scientists about how they use journals and studied the notebook pages of naturalists and thinkers from Leonardo da Vinci to Charles Henry Turner, Nikola Tesla. You said looking for patterns. How did they capture ideas and build meaning? So that captured my attention because I've never thought, like, oh, other people are journaling and doing these things that are helping them to increase their intelligences, emotional intelligence and other things.
That's right. So people say, isn't it lucky that, Leonardo da Vinci was this incredible genius and happened to leave behind these notebooks, and we can look back into Leonardo's notebooks and sort of see some of that genius. I would say that that's actually that framing of it kind of misses the point. Leonardo da Vinci was Leonardo da Vinci because Leonardo da Vinci kept those notebooks.
Hmm.
And if Leonardo da Vinci didn't keep notebooks like that, Leonardo
Interesting.
da Vinci would not have been the Da Vinci that we came to know.
Yes.
Every scientist who has significantly contributed to our understanding of the way that the world works that you can name kept a journal.
Come on.
And the
Wow.
ones who didn't, we don't know their names because they didn't really contribute anything.
Wow. I
The,
mean,
the
that's the
that
base right there. That just shows you how powerful it is.
Yeah, it is. I believe that keeping a journal is the missing piece,
Hmm.
right? It is.
Yeah.
And but it's interesting. There's a number of people who were totally tapped into this. Like you were talking about homeschooling families.
Yeah.
If you're familiar with the Charlotte Mason system,
Yes.
Charlotte Mason was totally
She
tapped into the.
she knew. Well, she's the one who says kids should be outside for 4 to 6 hours
Yes,
whenever the weather's
yes.
tolerable.
So
So yeah,
she's saying two things.
she's the
She's
start of our journey.
yeah.
Hmm.
So Charlotte Mason is out there saying, all right, frankly, get yourself outside. And number two, bring a journal with you. And so between you and me,
There we
what we're
go.
doing is we're just sort of going back to old school Charlotte Mason 101.
Mhm.
Read yourself some books,
Yeah.
go outside, bring a journal, and case closed.
Yes. Yes. And I think there is hope in that simplicity that we can do, this is what I always say, we can do less and gain more,
Boom.
and it's
You
an
just knocked it out of the
answer.
park. That's right. So this is not complicated.
Yeah.
This is basic stuff, and it can become sort of routines that are not just things that you do with your kids because you have to kind of follow some curriculum, but these
Yes,
are
because it's
practices that
fun.
change your life, and
Yeah.
you will do for the rest of your life as well, and they will carry these through
Yeah.
for their life.
Yes.
They will become
Yes. John,
lifelong readers.
I read,
They
so
will
I,
be people
yes.
in love with that and outdoors. They'll be going outside for the rest of their lives. They'll be keeping notebooks and journals and
Yeah.
thinking on paper.
Yeah. I got through, I'm preparing for this podcast. Like I said, in your world, but not. I mean, we're going outside for 1,000 hours every year. I'm not bringing along a journal. I'm missing. I read your books. I go grab mine.
There you go.
Because I'm like, I want to do it. I want to do it. I got my pencil case. I'm ready. And so to be able to, I think it's a gift, Jack, to be able to present material in a way that helps to strip away that guilt. And just says, I'm gonna go for it.
Yeah.
I'm
And
ready.
and it bothers me when I look at books that are kind of written from the perspective of, look how well I can do this skill. Aren't you impressed by that?
Mm,
I like books that kind of get under the hood and say, here's how I did this. Here's why I did this. You want to
yeah,
do it too? I did this and this and this and this. These are the things I was doing intentionally. And then this kind of works
yeah,
with practice and time. So just to try to I try to demystify a whole bunch of this process of, I'm going to pick up a pencil and grab a piece of paper, and I'm going to make an image of something, and that's going to help me look at it. And then it's neat
yeah.
to know
You
that a lot of
did.
the stuff you
You
can learn.
demystify is like such the perfect word for the book. It makes it attainable. The books
Yeah.
make it attainable, and also um, like intriguing, or it pulls you to say, "Oh, wait, it's dark, but now I can't wait till tomorrow because I've got my journal ready. I'm gonna go try it." And I know my kids are gonna follow. Um, can we talk about, I think that this is going to be a subject that's really interesting to parents, um, is that here uh, you are influencing the world, you got these phenomenal materials, you're dyslexic, and
Yes.
and this is a big part of your story, and you
I
talk about it in both
Yep.
books. um, and I know that a lot of our listeners, their children are dyslexic, and so I think, um, I was hoping to read, I wanted to read a little section in here. You say, my journals stoked my curiosity and accelerated my learning. I was and am dyslexic. In those days, I struggled academically. Nature was my refuge, and my journals were a safe place for me to wonder, think, write, and draw without fear of judgment or criticism. Um, and you talk about it in both books. It's very encouraging, I
Yeah.
guess, I mean, would be one word. I am dyslexic. You might be interested to see early drafts of this manuscript, the writing filled with phonetic misspellings. In my childhood, I thought that not being able to spell meant I was stupid. I was struggling in school, but in nature, I felt alive and safe from the red pens. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's so any dyslexic kids who ever listen to this podcast,
Hmm.
know that you're not alone.
Yeah.
Right? There's a lot of us out here,
Yeah.
and the time that it is hardest is right now in school. Um, they put so much weight on knowing how to spell those words or memorizing the multiplication tables. I still don't know my multiplication tables. I still can't spell. Um, and when I was in school, I thought that the fact that I couldn't do those things was a reflection of how smart I was.
Mm.
I thought that, those days we really didn't know very much at all about learning disabilities. I was Johnny Doe in a bunch of the early dyslexia experiments and research.
Mm.
Um, and um, you know, teachers, you know, they had models of how brains worked that, you know, basically if I just applied myself and worked harder, I would get through these things, right? And just kind of work your way through it. I still don't know how to spell, right?
And that's
And
okay.
but yeah, the difference is that now I know that that's not the most important thing. I know that
Hmm.
um, that's not an indication of my brain's ability to learn and grow. Um, I don't judge myself based on those narrow criteria. Turns out when you grow up, if you've got good ideas, somebody else will spell check them for you.
There you go. There you
There
go.
will be, you'll be, so, but the danger is that if we give up on ourselves, and I almost did,
Mm. Wow. Wow.
when I was in high school, um, I looked at all the evidence I had, and I thought to myself that, you know, I knew that grown-ups like to say things to make you feel better, and sometimes they'd say things that weren't true. For me, the simplest explanation for this was that I really wasn't that smart, and that there were smart kids and dumb kids. I was one of the dumb kids. And if you believe that, then it doesn't make any sense to try so hard. I could knock myself out trying to get those spelling words, and I still couldn't do it. At the end of the day, that paper would come back just covered with that red pen. And so if I didn't really try then, if I didn't give it my best, I used that then as my sort of way of kind of insulating myself from the shock and
Hmm.
the shame that I felt for not being able to do that. And found other ways to kind of make my mark. I sort of became a disruptive factor in school. I was the class clown and sort of used my sense of humor to further insulate me from the shame of dyslexia. Um, but I was lucky. There were two teachers who saw through that.
You write about them
And
in your book.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. And so for the teachers out there and for the parents out there, just to know what a difference that they can make,
yeah.
you
And
know?
you don't need to have great teachers every step of the way, but somebody who really sees through that. And these people had no, like, I knew that my parents who were telling me like, no, Jack, you're smart, right? Yeah, but yeah, you guys are my parents, right? You're supposed to say that. These two teachers, Leroy Voto and Alan Ridley, they didn't have any dog in the fight, and they saw through it.
Yeah.
And they looked at my ideas in a way that other people had, and they put away their red pen, and they came back to me front with my ideas with other ideas, and they asked me questions about my ideas, and I had more ideas about those ideas, and then it just went on from there. And in a matter of 1 year, they turned my world upside down.
Wow. And here you are, really just influencing the entire globe, you know? And so you said your journals were a place for you, to sort of retreat, and that's a gift, you know? So
Yeah,
that's a whole other
that's right.
branch, right? That's a whole
So
other
yeah, and so
branch of the
the
benefit.
journal itself, it's not about pretty pictures. So if pictures aren't your thing, right, don't worry about the pictures, but use pictures because they'll change the way you think.
Yeah.
If you can't spell, don't worry about the spelling, don't worry about the grammar, but the um, use words to help express your ideas. because again, it's a different kind of thinking. Use numbers to help you think in a totally different way.
You know what?
And
Well, there's something in here that I have never seen before, um, which was about, well, you call it forest karaoke, and there's journaling about transcribing bird songs. And I
yes,
thought that was fascinating, grabbing the rhythms. Well, and then you also talk, you have a history of birding with your dad, um, that I've heard you talk about. But then
actually,
this,
before we go on to this, just maybe
yeah,
I want to circle back
yep,
to the dyslexia one more time, because I've got
yes,
one other thought that I
yep,
think is relevant in there. Um, so I'm speaking directly to any other dyslexic kids out there. So the danger is, though, is what happened to me when I gave up on myself. Um, when you get out of school and you're in the rest of the world on the other side of this, again, there's somebody else who's going to check your spelling for you. It's going to be okay. The hard part is getting through this part right now, because there's like all this pressure and all this value on these things that I still can't do. And um, what you want to do is, like Whitman said, I contain multitudes. You contain multitudes. You are so much more than the way you spell, than you're transposing numbers, right? I have a card in my wallet that has my telephone number on it for when I forget what my telephone number is. Um, and um, what will happen as you kind of go along, you'll figure out these strategies and ways to compensate for this, and embrace this dyslexia. It is actually a gift. I know you're thinking like,
mhm,
no, 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 Jack, you don't understand. No, actually I did. And here's why I say that it's a gift. Because through your whole life and your school training here, um, you've never been able to go in the front door. And you could watch all those other kids walk in straight in through that front door. And that was never accessible to you. So if you don't give up on yourself, you have had to learn how to go around to the backside and find the other entrance, how to find the window that's open a little bit, climb up 2 floors and get in through that window. So you end up realizing that for any one problem, there's the one way which everybody else is taking. That hasn't been your way. The dyslexia forces us to take all these different other crazy circuitous paths. And if we don't give up on ourselves, down the line, that becomes an incredible strength that is so much more important than your ability to spell anything.
what a
And
message.
that's what makes
Yeah.
the difference. Um, so dyslexics are statistically way overrepresented as CEOs of Fortune 500 companies.
It's awesome.
We're also overrepresented in the general prison population
Okay.
because we can give up on ourselves. But if we
Yeah.
don't give up on ourselves, this struggle that you're in right now um, is going to train dyslexic superpowers in your head, in your mind, in you, that will look like magic to other people because you know how to climb up 2 floors and get in that window.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, don't give up on yourself. If I can be of any help to you or any families out there who are listening to this, I invite you at any point to just get in touch with me. You can just cold call me. My telephone number, my email is all on my website. And if you would help to have somebody else to talk to, I'm here for you. Or perhaps just my story and knowing that you're not alone. There's many of us out here.
Yeah.
Um, and you can do this. And you are not broken.
What a message. Is so important. And even just through your books, I think that kids and parents and teachers will get that message. You talk about it in the introductions. It's interesting, Jack. Elizabeth, she sent me um, a podcast of yours to listen to with someone else. I can't remember the name. And it was an hour and a half. And I was like, how could they talk for an hour and a half about nature journaling? Here we are. There's so much here, so much here that I guess I just didn't realize at all. Um, and so much about you, that's impacting the world through what you've discovered and through your persistence. Um, I wanted to touch real quick on just some of the cool things in the book. You have different activity ideas that are enticing. Like, I notice, I wonder, it reminds me of my secret plant. So I know we're running short on time here, but
Well, on
um,
my end, I've got all the time in the world.
okay. So people are be like, oh my God, I listened to an hour and a
So
half about
if you're
nature
listening to
journaling.
this, make some popcorn out there, everybody. We're going to be here for a while because
Oh,
I'm also this is fun for me. I'm really enjoying the chance to
yeah.
talk to you.
I
But yeah,
mean,
that idea of I
I
notice,
have
I wonder,
so
it
many
reminds
notes
me
here.
of
Yeah.
that. That idea is that's sort of like my nature journaling mantra. And the way
Okay.
that this works is so when I go out, there are three fundamental ideas that I'm trying to engage with. I'm trying to, how can I supercharge my ability to observe, supercharge my curiosity, and supercharge my creativity and my creative thinking and my sense of connection with things. And so the shortcut to that is this little phrase: I notice, I wonder. It reminds me of. And the way you use it is like this: you walk up to whatever it is and you just start saying out loud or documenting, writing down on your piece of paper all the things that you notice. And then the next thing, the next thing, and the next thing, and the next thing. And so we're intentionally sort of starting with this baseline of data, of observations about the world around us. And that then starts to stimulate our curiosity and questions. And so as questions come up, I write those down in my journal as well. And what I want to do is to try to stimulate myself to ask more questions. Can I make myself more curious? How many questions can I come up with? If you're a parent who's got a real youngster in the house, you know that they are, a little child is a question mark running around on two legs, right? And just little question mark, like what, how does, when will that, all these sorts of things. What happens is, I think as we kind of get older, that insatiable curiosity gets trained out of us.
Hmm.
We, if we've got questions, that's sort of a sign like, oh, didn't you read the chapter on that? As
Or you're
if,
embarrassed to ask. Like I was
yeah,
embarrassed to ask what is considered journaling,
right.
You're embarrassed.
And
Yeah.
the questions that you have are going to be the same questions. The ones that are most burning for you are going to be the ones that are burning for most other people.
Hmm.
But asking those obvious questions and then following that up with the question behind the question, and then you follow that up with the question behind the question behind the question. You can get better and better and better at asking questions. Asking really good questions is one of the critical skills to develop as a scientist. But that gets sort of, if we started off as question marks, by the time we are done with our formal schooling, most of us end up as periods.
Hmm.
And that I've got some facts, and that's it. Oops, this is my little notification to go take my daughter to swim class, but
Yeah.
my wife is handling that tonight.
Okay.
Sorry
Okay,
to
we're
have that
good. Okay, you're
alarm go
fine.
off.
No, you're fine.
Um,
Yeah,
the
so I noticed what I really loved about it is it's such an entry. It's so easy, you know, well, and there's several activities that are in the How to Teach Nature Journaling book, but that I notice, I wonder, reminds me of is it's a conversation starter. It's such an easy way
Yes, and
entry. It's an entry point.
you can do this with a phenomenon in science, a phenomenon in nature. you can also do this when you read a book.
Hmm.
Like, what did you notice about that chapter? What questions do you have? And the it reminds me of is a really interesting part of it. So the it reminds me of a lot of people are they kind of like intuitively understand, like I notice, I wonder, but like, why is that it reminds me of in there? This ends up being a really, really, really big deal. It's there for two reasons. Um, and that's your creativity and connection. So what you do with it reminds me of is you think to yourself, what have I seen, read, experienced in my life that one way or another, however tangentially, I can connect with this. And what you're going to do is like, so this is kind of like this other thing. And when you practice kind of finding the relationships between things like this, you get better and better and better at it. So my working definition of creativity is your brain's ability to make useful connections between seemingly unrelated things.
Hmm.
So if you can become one of these people like, oh, that's kind of like this, be one of these people who sees those connections and can see those relationships, that is really, really powerful. That's really, really powerful. And that is being somebody who is a connector in their head is a skill set that you want to develop. And it's something you'll get better at with practice. The other way it comes in is it helps you build a relationship with things, with nature. If I'm looking at this little mushroom out here and it reminds me of, whatever it is that, like I look at it and let's say it's like, oh, that's like Jabba the Hutt's palace, right? Um, okay. Um, that it's tying into something that I already have some neurons that are kind of built around this idea. If I tuck this in with there, it's now got more meaning for me.
Hmm.
And I'm more likely to remember those things that are connected to other sort of stuff. A little thought that is just has no mooring is likely to drift out into the ether. But if I can anchor that with some other observations or experiences, I will be better able to keep it. I will be also training myself to be a creative thinker. And I also am, um, I'm going to improve my relationship with whatever that is, because now it's like, oh yeah, there's the little Java houses. Like there's the little Javas out there.
Mhm.
And it enhances your connection with nature. If you look at something and like now, whenever I see a scrub jay on a wire with its tail sticking straight down, which is this posture that they characteristically do, they'll land and sort of have their tail down like this, and then it comes down, and then they end up with their tail just down like that. The day that I fell in love with bird watching, I was out with my dad, and he pointed that out to me.
Hmm.
And then on the way back, we saw this backlit bird on a wire. And he said, hey, son, what's that? And I looked up, I said, oh, that's a scrub jay. And I could recognize it because of the silhouette, because it was in
Wow.
that posture. And he said, I'm so proud of you, son. And
Hmm.
I felt on top of the world. Every time I see the scrub jay in that posture, I remember my dad.
Wow.
And so
Yeah.
that builds I now have a special relationship with scrub jay
Yeah.
that connects me to my father.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. So the benefits here are there's such a depth and
yeah,
breadth to them. You know, it's like, okay, life for a lifelong, we're a visual learner, better visual learner. For a lifelong, we're better at making connections and being more creative, but also we're connected to previous generations. And, you know, um, we have these beautiful reminders of people who have, you know, walked alongside of us. And, uh, you know, it's quite layered, beautifully
right.
layered. Yeah. My dad's favorite bird is the red-winged blackbird, so,
Oh, I
every time we see
love.
him, you think of that person, and that's
Mhm.
really special. Um, birding, so that I wonder, I wonder it reminds me of is an example, a very small example of that's one little concept in this book. It's on page 36. I wrote it down. You know, and then there's all these other ones of just these entry level ideas that anyone could do, multi age. I could do it. You know, a 2 year old could talk about it. You know, a grandmother could talk about it. What do you notice? You know, that type of thing. Um, and, but then there's all sorts of other ideas. You know, you talk about it reminds me of, and you have my secret plant and zoom in and zoom out. So, you know, my point is, you know, people would have to get the book to learn about it, but there's so much packed in here. And that's a gift, you know, to have a book with so much packed in there and so many things that feel accessible.
Yeah, well, a lot, that's all the stuff in that book has been um, tested with tons of people in the field.
Yeah.
And it's sort of guided by practical experience, teaching people how to do this stuff.
Hmm.
And that is, um, I think that's one of the things why people have found those books really useful
Yeah.
resources.
Yeah,
Um,
they're fantastic.
so
Well,
it's
so
sometimes
that's
you look at it kind of an educational guide, and it's
yeah,
obviously made by somebody who's never worked with kids. The
isn't that it's so fantastic. So that's is the how to teach nature journaling. And then in the other book, which is even a little bit bigger, um, this is the guide to nature drawing and journaling. And I found it interesting that you just like you said, it's practical information that also doesn't come across as like you have to do it this way. It's like a helper, you know.
right.
So you have all these sort of step by step. I was really intrigued by okay, so there's an animal section, there's birds, there's landscape. I was intrigued by the dragonfly. I love this. Speed drawing dragonflies. Like who doesn't want to speed draw a dragonfly, right? The way that you present the information draws people in. And transparent wings, you know, how to give the illusion of transparency by painting a ghost of objects seen through the wing. So you know, even this, I think it could be boring, but it's not. It's
Well,
just
I love books that you can pick up. You can open it to a random page and you look down, and within 15, 20 seconds, you found something useful.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
not kind of
Wow.
buried in there. And so what I've tried to do is I've tried to make that book really, I want that to be on every page.
Hmm.
And I want, probably it's because of my dyslexia. If the nuggets are hidden in paragraph 7, I'm not going to get to it. So I want to take all those nuggets and kind of get it out there in your face in the most visual way that you'll remember.
Wow.
And that's so
And that
kind of
is really that's what it
design
does.
theory.
That is what it does. It's just there's so many nuggets in there, and um, so I know I've said it already, but I really enjoy the books.
Oh,
Um,
thank you.
are there more books than those two?
Yes. So I wrote a book that is was sponsored by Audubon, The Law's Guide to Drawing Birds. So it's a book
Hmm.
entirely about drawing birds. There's
Yeah.
the Law's Guide to Nature Drawing and Journaling, which it has birds in it, but all these other topics as well.
Hmm.
How to teach nature journaling. I also have several field guides, one on
That's right.
birds of the Sierra Nevada, one on wildflowers of the Sierra Nevada, another one that is birds, mammals, reptiles, amphibians, insects, mussels, clams, worms, slugs, snails, stars, mushrooms,
Wow.
trees, shrubs, flowers of the Sierra Nevada. Um, and so I wanted to make one book that a person could bring with them backpacking, and everything that they find is going to be in that book.
Wow.
So that
Could,
was the result of 7 years of just
wow.
roaming through the woods and trails and hills, painting everything that I saw.
Could you ever imagined as a student that you would have had all these books as an adult?
Um, in high school, I was hiking the John Muir Trail, And my backpack was filled with field guides and books. And that whole time, I was fantasizing about the
Mm.
one book to rule them
So
all,
neat.
right?
So
You
neat.
know,
And you did it.
and so um, I was thinking, I was kept waiting for somebody to make that book, and then realized that nobody was. Um, my um, it was actually at the when when my grandmother, who is sort of my artistic muse, was at the end of her life and was in the process of dying, all family members went down and spent some time with her. And we did various jobs to kind of help take care of her in her home.
Mhm.
And my job was to sit up with her at night in case she woke up and had a lucid moment and could talk to somebody.
Wow.
And so I had a lot of time to think about when I am in that bed, what do I want my life to have been about? And
Mm.
at that time, I decided, I was thinking, like, would I have any regrets? And I realized that I would be sitting there thinking, I should have made that book about the Sierra Nevada.
Wow.
And her last gift to me was that after she died, I came home, I quit my job, I went and studied scientific illustration for 9 months, and then filled my backpack up with paper and granola bars and took off to the Sierra Nevada and began. Mary
That's
Oliver says
fascinating.
that one day you finally knew what you had to do and began.
Mm.
And I just started and knew that one way or another I was going to make that work, and it did.
It sure did. It sure did. I mean, your resources are so phenomenal. There's a couple other things I thought were really interesting in the How to Teach Nature Journaling book. One I had brought up just for a quick second earlier, but about just the bird songs and sort of paying attention to the patterns. And I thought, well, in transcribing them and like we talked about earlier, you just have so many examples in your book of nature journaling. So like I mean, this is a little kid and it says like beep beep and then it's got like it's got the quarter note and the little rest and he's like you know maybe it looks like dynamics or how do you hear it, it's loud and then gone and then loud and then gone and um so I love that this book is filled with, I mean, I would have never thought to follow the pitch and the pattern and you got these young kids that are journaling about the description. It sounds like a fast car and then a loud car. And um, so, do you want to talk for a minute about birding?
Yes, let me do that. First, I'm going to turn on the lights in this room because we
Oh
started,
yeah,
the sun
you're
was
losing your
up and
light.
in my
Yeah,
face. If anybody's watching on the YouTube
on
version,
the
you
on the
saw me kind
yeah.
of washed out with sun. Now I'm disappearing into the dark. Be
You're
right back. Ah,
so I guess I would love to talk. There we go. I see ya. The two
hey,
things. I thought the bird song piece was fascinating. And then there's a whole section in here about math. And I used to be a math teacher, and I just thought all these graphs and tally marks, and it just makes math look fun. So,
math is fun. Math
yes,
is beautiful.
and they
So
kind of goes along with the bird song. So I thought maybe
yeah,
we could just kind
let's
of
geek
grab
out
those
on that.
two as our last little bit here.
So let's talk math, because math gets this bad rap because math in a lot of places is taught solely as calculation. And math for a mathematician is a way of thinking about the world. So if you were taught literature just by spelling and grammar rules and never read a book, you'd think that writing was boring.
Oh, you're so right.
But that's the
Mhm.
way we teach math. Out of context,
Yeah.
rules of calculation. And then we time you on how fast you can calculate those things and whether or not you can memorize um, memorize the multiplication tables. And then how fast can you calculate this thing. We'll have somebody calculating square roots without an understanding of what it even means and
Yeah.
why you would want to. So with the nature journaling, one of the things we do is we get people to start counting things, measuring things, timing things.
Looking for
Um,
patterns.
yeah, looking for patterns. And if you can't be specific, to estimate, and how can you kind of figure out how your estimations are? How can you sample things? So you take one measurement, okay, what if we take 50? How can you
Mm.
understand that without having to calculate the mean and the standard deviation? Um, and math all of a sudden has a relevancy because it's in a context of, squirrels that you're looking at.
Mm-hmm.
And then it makes sense. And so I think that if you start math from real phenomena, and we kind of get there, I mean, doing a word problem kind of suggests this, but even doing a word problem is out of the context of,
Yes, I agree. I think they're boring.
yeah,
But this is
you're
fascinating. I look
yeah,
through these pages
exactly.
of math. Someone was just talking recently about the sunflower and how the seeds, it's like the Fibonacci
The
sequence and how the
Fibonacci
seed,
spiral is built into
yes,
there.
and how that makes it so that they can take in the most sunlight. Well, that's fascinating. I never heard that.
Yeah, and the arrangement of the leaves going down the stem is in another Fibonacci pattern.
Wow.
Um, so the number, if you look at the positions that those leaves come out around the stem as it goes down, if you count the number of positions to go down, it's a number on the Fibonacci sequence, and the number of
Wow.
times it spirals around to get to that same position is a number on the Fibonacci sequence 2 positions lower on the sequence than that other number that you got for the number of positions. There is math
Wow.
everywhere around you. You live in a math world.
Hmm.
And what kind of starting to kind of measure more things and count them, and then to diagram the numbers that we get. But one of the things that it's really useful in the book is I teach people how to make stem leaf plots. There's this
Uh-huh.
wonderful, very intuitive way of like it is, you realize like, oh, I don't have to calculate the mean and the standard deviation, and I can understand a large group of numbers. I can be like, I think one of the things that's one of the critical things that's missing from Western education is an understanding of statistics.
Yeah.
And so we don't understand statistics, so we're afraid of it. So anything with kind of hints at statistics, everybody just kind of quotes Mark Twain's and says there are lies, damn lies, in
Eh,
statistics, or that that but it's a way of playing with numbers and thinking about numbers that allows us to reveal the patterns and to also
mm,
identify when there are not patterns there when we thought they were, because our brains are such sort of crazy biased things that we will see. We're great, human beings are great um, at seeing patterns where there are no patterns.
hmm.
And so one of the things that statistics helps us do is to play with that. So, but we don't teach people statistics. And so um, but we will teach people advanced calculus that they end up not using. But we don't teach them
Right.
statistics. And if we do teach them statistics, it's again only about calculating the mean and the standard deviation, and not how to think about, like, the way that numbers behave. Numbers have behavior, and the and there's lots of sort of strange counterintuitive things, but you start to kind of play with that, and numbers become less threatening.
Mm.
So numbers are
Yeah.
one of our 3 ways.
Oh, I love that. Yeah. Less threatening.
Yeah. So numbers are one
Fun.
of the 3
Fun.
languages. Yeah,
I
they're
look at
they're
these.
fun.
I'm like, I
That
look at
so
these. The stem and so this is the stem and leaf plot page, but this, if you look at these particular journals, and then you talk about angles, you talk about using your hands to show angles, you talk about percent cover. Well, this is all like, oh, this is fun. This is
Yes,
fun.
it
I want to
is.
do this. And
It
and
is.
to
Let's
have a
play with
child
that.
who plays around with numbers.
Play with numbers.
Yeah.
So, and like the idea of innumeracy is really interesting. Um, the You have an intuitive idea of what 3 looks like. You have an intuitive idea of what 5 looks like. 127, what does a flock, how big is a flock of 127 ducks?
Hmm.
How big is a flock of 2,500 ducks?
Yeah.
Once we start to kind of get into larger numbers, our ability to even visualize those starts to fall apart. So one of the things which we teach in this is how can you get better at estimating things? And
Which is an
how do you,
important skill. I
yes,
think that's an important skill, lifelong estimation.
and you can do this, you know, if you're waiting at a bus stop, you look across the street and they say, I think that there are 20 people at that bus stop. And then what you do is you group count them. So you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5, 10, 15, 20, oh, about 25. Huh. So, and when you group count them by in a little cluster, chunk, 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 you get more, then you're able to sort of see, you know, my initial count of those, I kind of came in too low. Am I regularly an underestimator? Turns out I am. Other people are regular overestimators. So
Hmm.
where do you fit in?
Interesting.
And then what you do is you sit there and you count them individually. One person, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Right? You're at a concert. How many people are in this room?
Hmm.
Hmm. So what you can do is you can say, all right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50. Okay, if that's 50, then that's 100. Now let's count by 100. So if that's 100, then 200, 300, 400, 500, 600. You can get, the more that you practice this, the better you're going to get consistent numbers each time you do it. And if you are able then in some of these circumstances, then to turn around and ground truth that, to find out actually this is how many people were in the concert hall that day, then
Hmm.
you are going to be able to also over time make yourself not just more precise, getting the same number each time you estimate, but also improve your accuracy, that you are getting closer to the actual number of people in the room. And so you can conquer your own innumeracy to
Wow.
the degree that you are sort of working with um, within the range that you normally count. You know, for instance, we have a national debt in the trillions, right?
Right.
So what does that mean? It means
Yeah, no one really has a good
nobody
grasp
knows.
on it.
So it
Sure.
turns out that even theoretical mathematicians cannot visualize a trillion.
Wow. Wow.
And so you might as well be saying that we have a national debt in the blah, 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 right? In
Sure.
the magic numbers, it's now a magic number
Yeah.
because it's a number that is so large that your brain cannot wrap around it, right?
Wow.
Um, so,
That's
but
interesting.
I mean, that's also
It's all
useful.
interesting. That's the thing. Like I taught math and it was so sad. These kids came and, it's just I know, like forever. I'm like, I'm not good at math. But then, I look at your book and I'm like, well, this is fun. Even fractions. I think fractions are such a turning point for kids. But I think if they spend a lot of time outside, you see fractions in a lot of different scenarios and you see symmetry and um I don't know. I guess just as a whole, I feel like this is such a great book for anyone, right? For a parent, for a teacher, for a child, for a grandparent. Um, and I just think it's really neat that it ended with the math and it made it seem like it was a
Yeah.
really fun thing where when most kids don't think,
Yeah, it is.
they think
So
it's burdensome.
mathematics is a language for describing the world.
Yeah,
And it is as beautiful as the world that it describes.
that's great. Yeah. It was really, really, I was very fascinated. And, I wasn't quite sure what to expect. Like I said, we've not been nature journaling, but we definitely will be. Um,
So
okay,
to help you on that,
yeah,
so every week I teach 2 free classes on how to do nature journaling. And there are people from all around the world who just sort of
so
tune
neat.
into these classes. And
Hmm.
if you don't make them, I record them and I put them up on YouTube. Um,
Yes.
and
Elizabeth
so
said that you have so many free resources
yeah, so
on
this is
YouTube.
accessible to any family anywhere. There is no paywall that you have to get through. So every Tuesday is what we call Ask Jack, where people come in and they say, like, I'm having a hard time drawing waterfalls. How do you handle that?
Oh,
And or whatever topic is kind of
okay.
burning on their mind. What do we do this? So this last Tuesday, they came in there and they said, Jack, drawing raccoons. Raccoons, they've got this weird shape and then all these crazy patterns. And we just did a deep dive into drawing raccoons. Um, Thursdays are more of a formal class where I will know what I'm teaching before I get there. So I might have
Okay.
materials prepared for me, but you don't get to pick the topic. So
Hmm.
I pick the topic, I come with my materials. Those subjects are announced on my website, which is johnmuirlaws.com. And also, if you are a homeschooling parent or an educator or you run a nature center, every Wednesday we have a free Nature Journal Educators Forum, which is also a Zoom meeting where we have um, uh, wide-ranging or sometimes very focused discussions about best practices in nature journaling, both for working with a large group or working with a small team like a family.
Jack, this is incredible. And then you also have a conference, a
Yes,
yearly conference?
the Wild Wonder Conference is we've had our first one was pre-COVID
Hmm.
and
Was it in person?
was in person,
Okay.
and then since then we've had 2 online Wild Wonder conferences. We get really incredible speakers
Yeah.
and who will kind of help you in all sorts of different aspects. We've also had in association with that, a Nature Journal Educators Conference, which is a multi-day event, a series of speakers to kind of pull you through, like, here's the major framework for what we're doing and kind of help people build the skills. So people can get video passes to those. If there's an economic hardship, you just send us an email and say, hey, I've got an economic hardship, but can I get into this? I'd really love to see this. Similarly, if there is something that you see that is, I have a store on my website.
Hmm.
If
Yeah,
there's
this is where
something,
I saw the books are there, the
yeah,
field guides are there,
uh,
johnmuirlaws.com.
if there's something that you see on that you need, and at this time you can't afford it, all you have to do is just send me a private email, and I will do what I can to send you what you need.
Wow.
You don't have to explain why. And if there's some point in the future that you can pay me back, I appreciate that. Otherwise, what I encourage people to do is just to find another way of paying it forward with an act of stewardship in nature or an act of kindness in your community to just make the world a little bit of a better place because somebody sent you some free nature journaling supplies.
Yeah. Yeah. And those have some lifelong benefits. I have to ask about your name.
Yes.
Uh,
Um, when so I am, first of all, am I a descendant of John Muir? Well, yes and no. I'm a direct descendant of John Muir, but not the one that everybody is thinking of.
okay.
Um, the my John Muir, I think, never saw the Sierra Nevada and was a bit of an ornery longshoreman. Um, but growing up, I thought that I was related to my parents named me John Muir, so I didn't change my name just to
Okay, so
sell
this
books
is
about the
your
Sierra Nevada.
name. This is your
That
actual
really
name.
is my name. It's what it
Okay.
says on my driver's license, and it's what
Okay.
it says. Actually, I just got a hold of my original birth certificate. Let's see if I can find that right here, because it's weird to find your
Does
own birth
everybody
certificate.
ask you this? I tried to find it on the internet so as not to have to ask, but I couldn't really find it. Do a lot
Yeah,
of people ask you?
People are curious about this,
Yeah.
because
I mean, I'm curious.
especially it's such an what they call an apropism, that the
Right.
like, if John Smith becomes a blacksmith, um,
Right. Right.
the so
Is that a word? Aproprism.
I think that's right.
Aprop. I've learned a couple new words today. Confabulation was another one.
Oh yeah, so check this out. Look at this.
It's really you.
There it is, with a stamp and
I mean, that is
everything.
so neat.
This is the original birth certificate for John Muir Laws, and it says John Muir Laws on there. Now, apparently, for a long time, it just said Baby Boy Laws because they couldn't figure it out. But my mom and dad um, finally settled on the name John. It was going to be middle name Muir, whether it was a boy or a girl.
Okay.
Um,
And
after
did they name you after the family member? Did they name you
after the
after?
family member.
Okay.
But both of my parents were members
Who?
of the Sierra Club. My mom was a Sierra Club lawyer. My parents' whole courtship was running around in the Sierra Nevada.
Cool.
So they were down with John Muir,
Yeah. And
and
then it was a family name.
and then it's a family name. And the final the piece was that kind of got it, was actually the nickname Jack, because my grandfather went by was also a John, went by the nickname Jack.
Mm.
And somebody wrote my mom a letter, apparently with beautiful handwriting, and said, all right, Beatsy, it's been way too long. You have to name this child. And I think that you should name him um, John Muir Laws. And but everybody should call him Jack. And then she had this beautiful script, and she wrote out in this flourish, she wrote Jack Laws. And then she wrote, it sounds like a stagecoach driver. So
That's a
Jack
cool
Laws,
name.
Jack Laws,
That's a
that's
cool
right.
name.
Jack Laws, stagecoach driver. That's
Yeah.
me. And so, stagecoach, that stuck. And so
But
I'm
your name
now,
is really John Muir and John Muir
I'm
Laws.
really
I
John
mean,
Muir.
it's
Yeah,
really cool.
it's cool. It's really fun.
It's really
And so
cool.
I just grew up with those stories. So it sort of seemed to me like the most natural thing, like, oh, there's a windstorm. What are you going to do? Climb a tree, right? Yeah. So very familiar with all of those crazy John Muir tales and stories.
Yeah. That's really awesome. Well, Jack, I so appreciate this. I think people know where to find you. And we'll definitely put the links and all those things in. We always end our podcast by asking about a favorite outside memory of yours from childhood. So is there a memory that you could
Yeah.
share from your childhood that was outside?
Let me go back to the day that I fell in love with birds. I'd actually already alluded to that. My I liked outdoors. I liked nature. Birds were okay, but I wasn't like crazy about them. My dad was having some heart trouble. We needed to get my dad out and exercise. Turns out he didn't like to exercise. So what I could do is I could say, hey, Dad, do you want to go bird watching? And he'd go, well, son, that sounds like a great idea. And because he loved birds. And so we'd go bird watching. And so we went out and we'd kind of walk around someplace and go bird watching. Well, this one day we went out bird watching at a place called Five Brooks Pond in Point Reyes. And we were walking around the pond and he found a wood duck, and that was really cool. But then my dad went over to his book. He said, son, I want to show you something. And it came over to this willow bush by the edge of Five Brooks Pond. And he went, and as he made this strange little pishy noise, I saw movement in the bushes, and whatever it was kept coming closer and closer to us. It was this little bird, and the noise that he was making attracted the bird. and it popped out and sat on the branch in front of us. It's this tiny little tiny thing. And then out of the top of its head, it spread its feathers, and this red crown pops out on top of its head.
Wow. Wow, what a connection.
And I was hooked. That was a ruby crowned kinglet that he had pished out of the bush. And so then I grabbed the field book. Now this time I went through the book and I found the bird. I said, "That's the ruby crowned kinglet." And from that point on, I was hooked.
Yeah.
And then I go like, "Dad, you want to go birding?" And and I really wanted to go birding. So yeah, the first bird is free, and then
Wow.
and then you're hooked.
Wow,
And
what a neat thing. Just about reframing. Reframing someone that doesn't want to exercise, but they want to go birding.
yeah,
We can reframe so many things, for ourselves and for our kids. That
that's
I
right.
love. That's a great story. What a cool story. And now you got a field guide and you have a how to draw birds book. That's
That's right.
so awesome. That's so awesome.
Thanks, Dad.
Well, Jack, I cannot tell you how much I have enjoyed this.
Cindy,
Like
this
I
has been
said,
a ton of fun.
I got that thing about from Elizabeth, like an hour and a half podcast about nature journaling.
I don't think
Here
we can do
and
that.
here it goes. Well, because it's so much more. There's so much to it. And so you have inspired me. I know that the people who are listening will be so inspired. Just grab a little journal, make a cute little hiking adventure kit, and grab and name their rope. Put a rope in there and give it a name.
That's right.
Yeah, and all those things.
Elizabeth too.
Yeah,
Um, and if I can be of any help or support to you, kind of getting your journal on, remember there are those Ask Jack sessions, and
yeah,
I've got
yes,
hundreds of hours of
yes.
free tutorials and stuff on my website.
Yeah, I mean, you are a wealth of information. So I know my kids really like to draw, and I actually like to draw. I actually illustrated a kid's book of my
Oh,
own.
cool.
So it's
What
you
is
look
the
back
book?
and you're not. It's called The Little Farmhouse in West Virginia. I wrote like a kid's book. Uh,
Oh,
I'll
look
send
at
you a
how.
copy. I wrote a kid's book a couple years ago. About like my first early childhood memories of visiting my great uncle's
Oh, go back
farm.
to the one with the bunny on it. Go back to the bunny
Um,
page.
so I don't know what there is. This is like my great uncle had a dairy farm in West Virginia, and we would go visit as kids. And there was no toys. They didn't
Oh,
have any
that's the page.
kids.
Oh, it's a skull. I just saw
So
part of the
there's
oh, the lake. Oh, sorry, the river.
yeah, it's a little river. I know it's hard to see through a screen. But
Yeah.
anyway, so we would go visit and they didn't have toys. And so this is just some of my earliest memories of outside. And so I thought I'm going to write a little kids book about it. And then I had a friend, I thought her son would illustrate it for me because he was really good at drawing and he was too busy. He was like in high school. He's like, I don't have time for that. So I was like, I'll take a stab at it.
Did you also do the little inset there on the little frame, the little duck and duckling?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
So
see, that's a
that
nice
was
touch.
fun.
That the little
It was
cat
fun.
silhouettes.
And
That's
then
really
my
nice
I
layout.
did it because my kids and then my kids were like, "Oh, that's cool, mom." So I like to draw. I think everybody does. I think.
That's cool. That's
Don't
really
you
neat.
think most people like to draw? They like to doodle
Well,
and,
what we,
you
we we
know,
we do until we
feel
start
judged.
judging. Yeah,
Yeah.
the judging, it kind of kills us. The judging is the creativity killer.
Yeah.
And so that's something that I address in a lot of my programs really directly. Like, how do you handle that inner critic who says, like, you're not
Mm,
worthy? Who do you think you're fooling? Like
wow.
you can't do this. Like, no, 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 no,
Mm,
no, no.
yeah.
Or if you wanted to do this, it's too late. You should have started earlier. All these sort of bad reasons not to start.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yeah,
It's so
but
important.
all those bad reasons are just bad reasons.
Yeah.
Um, and this is something you can start wherever you are.
Yep.
And the more that you kind of go forward on that path, it is surprising how fast, you develop these skills. You know people who they didn't think they could do arty stuff, and then in
Yes.
retirement they started doing some arty thing, and all of a sudden you're like, wow,
Yes,
You
you
buy
say that
this
in your book,
gift
even
that is in
six
there.
weeks. I think I read in your
Yeah,
book something like, you take your thing, look 6 weeks, do it once or twice a week or
yeah.
whatever. And 6 weeks later, look back at your beginning and you'll see improvement. And you know what? We don't really have opportunity to see improvement
So
in many aspects of our life.
and that's what's so cool about the journal is that if you're putting all of your notes and drawings in there, and for terms of learning growth mindset ideas, it's going to
Mhm.
show you two things. One is how much you've progressed. You go this many pages back and you go like, oh, I wasn't as good then. Now I'm better now. Wow, I can see myself getting better. And the other thing is it shows you how many pages it took to get there. So you have the amount of work that you did and the result of that work recorded in the same document.
What a
Yeah.
fantastic thing to see visually, especially for a child, I think, to have that
So
baseline
yeah,
that
so
they
with
can
my
improve.
daughters, what I do is so I let them know that when you fill up this journal, you get to go to the art supply store with me and we get to pick out a new journal and you get to pick out any journal you want.
That's
Right. And so they want to get their next journal. And then what we can do is we can kind of open up the journal, then you number them. Like, let's go a couple of journals ago. Look at what you're drawing this time and put the dates in there. So look what you're drawing, you know, 2 years ago.
yeah,
Look at what you're doing now. Where are you seeing improvement? And you'll be able to see dramatically this improvement.
yeah. And that growth mindset is transferable,
Growth
so then
mindset
when
is
they try
transferable.
other
So
when they try other things throughout their
right,
life, they're going to know.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. So I try to any chance I get to demonstrate growth mindset things, um, I do. So right now uh, as of a few months ago, I'm learning how to play the ukulele,
All right.
and both my daughters have been playing ukulele for a few years, and they're both much better than I am.
Hmm.
And so I let them watch me practice and watch me struggle, and then I ask them for help. And then I take what they showed me and I do it again, 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 and I do it again. And I say, am I better? They say, yeah, you just got better on that. Right. And so you can demonstrate it, you can see it happen in yourself. So try to get yourself on some interesting part of a growth curve. Right. So
Have you ever read John Holt? He says, it does actually change my life. He talks about just how kids learn. He has a book called Learning All the Time, but he says kids need some sense of the processes to get a job done. And so often they don't see the process from start to finish. So he says, let them watch you build a table. And he specifically says, you know, show them your skills, and if you have none, learn something. That's
yes,
basically, what he says,
yes,
and learn it
yes.
in front of them so that they can get a sense, of the process and how we grow and how we learn and that it takes time, you know. It's so neat that that's what you're doing.
Yeah, I think that some people think that they need to show competence to their children.
Hmm.
That, and this is not something that I'm good at, so I shouldn't do this in front of them. We also don't want to show our incompetence to other adults because, especially a lot of grown-ups, a lot of our identity is through our competencies. You ask somebody, what do you like to do? And they'll tell you the things that they're good at. And
Yes.
so
Yes. Mm-hmm.
um, instead of showing your competencies, show your process
Yeah.
and embed yourself in that growth mindset set um, framework and sort of be are specific about that. This is something that you are not good at yet, right? You want to demonstrate the power of the word yet,
Yeah.
and have that be part of your routine.
I
And
love it.
if you've got a goal and you're not there yet, let them know, and let them know that you're working towards this. Um, you're
Are
talking
you?
about the process of things. For me, a big thing that kind of helped me kind of realize that is that I was a Boy Scout. And with Boy Scouts, you kind of go through these ranks, and you kind of, when you were
Mhm.
starting a new little Boy Scout, like an Eagle Scout is this unattainable thing way up there. It's a little plaque on the wall with all the names of the
Mhm.
Eagle Scouts underneath it. And instead of uh, sort of thinking of it that way, this unattainable thing, you do this little thing and then you get this little badge, and then you do this and this and this and this, and then you get this, and that builds you towards that, and then you do this and that builds you towards that. And you see that all the things that you're doing, it doesn't happen all at once, but you're building the skills to get you where you want to go. And that's, we see that all sorts of places. I mean, being a parent is such a wonderful adventure in this way, that we get to re-reflect on these important lessons and then try to demonstrate them ourselves.
Yeah, it's such a gift. And then, then you hope you get to do it again as a grandparent. It's a
Oh boy.
beautiful, beautiful journey of life for sure.
Yeah.
Someday I'd like to hear you play the ukulele.
Someday I will play for you.
That'd
Or
be
if you
great.
would like to hear me play a few misplaced notes, I could do that for you now, but it will
Do you
not.
have it close by?
It's over there.
Let's end with that. I think
Okay.
that's the perfect ending. That's great.
So,
No, because
well,
this is it.
all right. So you'll hear somebody who's been
Yeah, we'll
playing
hear it.
ukulele for just a little while,
Yeah,
trying to play some ukulele. Let's give that a try.
yeah, let's hear it. All right.
So here's my little ukulele. And I, so what I'm intentionally doing right now is not saying, sometimes when people are sort of sitting down like this, they will tell you in advance, okay, this is going to be terrible, right? But I don't want to frame things like this. I want to, but I can show you sort of where I am in my process right now. I'm really proud of, I can rock a scale.
All right. This is
And
great.
so, whoops, there was a scale with a goof in the middle of it. So what I have to do this next time is to go, oh, 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 so you want to come at the end. So I do the G. Okay, so we got to go. Let's say them out loud. We got C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, C, B, A, G, F, E, D, C. Oh, how about that?
I love it. You should be
And
so proud. What's interesting is that the first time you went through it, Jack, and you said, I made a mistake or something, I didn't hear it. And I think that's part of life too. Is that other people, we hear our own mistakes, but other people usually don't, you know?
yeah,
And
so it's, for me, it is so cool being able to, or I'm trying to learn a song from the movie Harry Potter,
yeah,
called Fireworks, that my daughter really wanted to play. They're both like jamming on it.
yeah.
And the but it is the, that's the way it starts. That's the start of
Yeah,
Fireworks.
that's awesome.
And
There's oh, go ahead.
it's I love being, so again, it's you're not stuck with the brain that you're born with. It's the brain that you choose to build through repetition with effort. And so it's your brain. What are you going to do with it?
Hmm.
And there are lots of things that you could do. Something that I love about this process is just sort of embracing the vulnerability of not being there yet. And
That's a huge statement.
it might be that
Yeah.
because the ukulele is a little bit of a sweet and kind of goofy instrument. Sometimes that might be helpful in letting me let go of some of that adult ego that wants to cling to competency and not being willing to be vulnerable in that place of not there yet. So,
Not there. It's so beautiful. There's this book called Smart Moves. It's written by a pediatric occupational therapist. Her name's Carla Hannaford. And she says that as we get older, if we play an instrument, that we have 69% less chance of developing dementia or Alzheimer's. So 69% less chance. So it's just interesting. Like movement protects our brain,
yeah.
and learning complex things, and it protects our brain. It enhances and protects. So there's so many benefits there. I think that was the coolest thing that you just modeled to everybody. That you're learning something new, you're doing it in front of your daughters. What you blessed us with that. That was
Oh,
awesome.
thank you. Thank
What
you.
a cool ending to the podcast. And if anybody ever was curious if you could talk for 2 hours about nature journaling, the answer is yes, you can.
I
You
give that a
sure,
big thumbs up.
you
This
sure
has
can.
been a ball. This has
Jack,
just
it's
been a
been,
ball.
I so appreciate your time. I have had an absolute blast. I cannot wait to share this. I'm so excited that it's coming out on Thanksgiving, heading into the holiday season. You want to check out johnmuirlaws.com because he has all sorts of nature journal. You have all sorts of supplies there,
Yep.
for people. They're great gifts. Like they're giving kids lifelong benefits. You buy it for your family, for yourself. His books are phenomenal. If you're a grandparent, get these for your grandkids. They're so cool. How to teach nature journaling. They're both fantastic. Any of the field guides. And Jack, thank you so much.
It's been a hoot. Really appreciate it. Be well.